The first industrial era relied on coal-fired steam to drive textiles, railroads, and iron. But in the late 1800s, manufacturing pushed into a new industrial frontier, trading heavy fossil fuel engines for more concentrated forms of power. This shift began with steel. In 1855, Sir Henry Bessemer patented a process to strip impurities from molten iron, making high-quality steel cheap and efficient to mass produce. It was lighter and stronger than iron, allowing engineers to build faster machines, larger ships, and heavier armaments. Alongside came a second breakthrough: electricity. Unlike steam, this new energy source moved easily through wires and could be converted into heat, light, or motion anywhere. By 1910, hydroelectric and coal-fired plants began connecting homes and factories to a single common source of power. This combination of durable steel and portable electricity meant factories were no longer tethered to coal-rich regions or rushing rivers. Industrial production could now be established in any city with a rail line and a power connection. In 1913, American manufacturer Henry Ford drew inspiration from the military's use of interchangeable parts to build the first moving assembly line. He organized his factory so that components were added by different workers in a precise, high-speed sequence. This required a total division of labor. Complex craftsmanship was broken down into highly specialized, repetitive microtasks. A worker no longer built a machine. They spent 10 hours a day performing a single, standardized motion as the product moved past them. At the same time, electric light bulbs meant the workday was no longer limited by the sun. Factories implemented shift systems where specialized teams would end their day and be immediately replaced by another. For the first time, production never had to stop. This relentless efficiency flooded department stores with affordable clocks, bicycles, and typewriters. But while consumers enjoyed a new culture of mass-produced goods, the human worker was increasingly treated as a standardized, replaceable component of the factory itself. As the speed of manufacturing accelerated, local resources could no longer keep pace with the demand. To keep the assembly lines moving, industrial nations reached across the globe to secure a steady supply of raw materials. By 1900, a global trade network was in place. Steamships carried beef and wool from Argentina and Australia, coffee from Brazil, and iron ore from Algeria, all funneling directly into the industrial centers of Europe and North America. This global loop created a sharp divide. While the rest of the world provided the raw resources, the resulting wealth and manufacturing power became concentrated in a small, industrialized core. By the turn of the century, Europe and North America dominated the global economy. The Second Industrial Revolution didn't just expand trade, it engineered a permanent economic gap between the industrialized nations and the agricultural regions that fed them. Inside those wealthy industrial centers, life for the workers was often wretched. Shifts lasted up to 16 hours a day without a minimum wage. In the coal mines, children as young as 4 were sent into cramped, damp shafts to dig out the fuel that powered the system, often leaving them with ruined lungs and deformed bodies. In 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels responded to these conditions by publishing the Communist Manifesto. They argued that industrial capitalism was built on a history of class struggle that would inevitably lead to a breaking point. Marx saw society splitting into two hostile camps: the bourgeoisie, who owned the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class, who owned nothing and depended entirely on the owners for their survival. Across Europe and the US, workers began organizing trade unions to fight for their own safety. They used strikes to physically halt production, forcing factory owners to negotiate for higher wages and shorter hours. These localized protests eventually coalesced into massive political machines, like the German Social Democratic Party, which by 1912 grew into the largest party in the German parliament. Individual frustration had been forged into a disciplined movement that competed for votes and successfully pressured governments to adopt social reforms. The demand for factory labor pulled millions of people away from rural farms and into urban centers. In just 50 years, London's population more than doubled to 2.5 million, creating densely packed cities that were unprepared for the sudden influx of human waste and industrial smog. These conditions triggered a biological crisis. Overcrowding and filth allowed epidemic diseases like cholera, tuberculosis, and influenza to ravage European cities, killing thousands who had no way to stop the spread. The breakthrough came in the 1850s, when Louis Pasteur proved that illness was caused by microscopic germs. Based on this discovery, German physician Robert Koch was able to identify the specific organisms that caused cholera and tuberculosis. Proving that invisible microbes cause disease turned city survival into a technical challenge. Armed with this evidence, reformers could finally demand that local governments replace filthy living conditions with sanitized, planned infrastructure to prevent future outbreaks. Governments began a massive campaign of public works. They built underground sewage systems to carry waste far from the cities, and engineered vast tunnels and aqueducts to bring fresh water from the countryside directly into urban homes. To prevent the social unrest Marx had predicted, leaders like Otto von Bismarck introduced the first welfare programs. They created old-age pensions, medical care, and unemployment insurance, reforms designed to pacify the working class and keep the industrial system stable. The modern world, from public sanitation to the social safety net, wasn't planned at the start of the Industrial Revolution. These systems were built as necessary defense mechanisms to survive the ruthless speed and efficiency of the new industrial age. We live in the world the second Industrial Revolution built, but its history forces us to ask, was the price of this rapid progress actually worth the cost?